Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope we are all well on this sunny Tuesday. Well, at least it appears to be sunny in Manchester, which is where we are currently in the sim. But yeah, I hope we're all well. Malky, good afternoon. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. So yeah, we are on stand here in Manchester. And as you'll see from the bar at the top, we are heading over to Echo Sierra Sierra Alpha, also known as Stockholm Arlanda. Bit of a longer flight, just under a 2-hour block time, I believe. He says, just checking. Oh no, tell a lie. 2 hours 13-minute flight time. So yeah, just over a 2-hour block time. For our flight today. So this is the continuation of our 737 tutorial series, started way back in 2024, but we did a stream last, I think it was last Friday, last week some point, who knows, with the Christmas period everything blurs into one, but we did a stream last week. Which covered a sort of a general flight from A to B. We went down from Edinburgh down to Gatwick and covered off the sort of standard procedures to go through when flying a 737 NG specifically. And we went through a number of things, but this specific section of the tutorial series is going to be more focusing on the descent planning, descent management, speed management, energy management as we go into the descent and so on, into Stockholm. We may well then do another flight after we've landed in Stockholm. We'll see what the time is like and everything like that. But for the moment, we're going to use that slightly longer cruise to talk through some theory and some principles around descent and descent management and descent planning as well. So with that said, what we're going to do is not hang around too much on the setup and getting up into the air. We want to get up into the cruise so we can start talking about the descent. So we shall jump into the aircraft, and we're going to go through, I'll run through the processes and everything for setting up the aircraft. I won't go into too much details. If anyone does have any questions on the setup and everything like that, you can either go back and look at my 2 previous videos on YouTube, or just drop a question in the chat and I'll answer where I can. But the aim is obviously just to get up into the air relatively swiftly. Josh, good afternoon. Hello, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. So we are here in the 737-800NG. Just realised I used French grammar. All good. Don't worry about that. All sorts of grammar is welcome here. So we're in the 737-800NG from PMDG 2024. We are on stand 105 at Manchester. We'll be doing this flight offline, no traffic or anything like that. So we're just going to concentrate on operating the plane and not worry too much about any of the other factors. We'll talk about those other factors that come in, but we're not going to do it on VATSIM or anything like that. So let's run through our setup process so we can look at getting up into the air. So we'll start off with the wrong button. Why didn't that work? That's not supposed to do that. That button, there we go. That's better. So we'll start off with our cockpit preparation checklist. So we've got this in my turnaround mode that I discussed in my last stream. So this is, if you imagine we've just walked onto the aircraft, it has landed from another flight. Previous set of crew have left the aircraft in this sort of turnaround state for us. So the IRS is already aligned and up and running, but we'll run through our checklist. So battery is on and is guarded. Position light is set to off and needs to be set to steady. So we set that to steady. APU will turn on in a minute. We're not going to do that straight away, just while we get things set up. Emergency exit lights are armed and guarded, and our passenger signs, they are in the process of getting boarded, so we will now switch them on, and we will switch that one on as well. Window heats are all on and showing as green. Hydraulic pumps have been left on from the last flight. Normally they would be turned off, but the crew seem to leave those ones on, but they're all on, so that's fine. Packs can now come on. They've been turned off, but the passengers are now getting on, so we'll turn the packs on. APU bleed will leave off until we switch the APU on. Pressurization system, we will be flying at flight level 350 today, so we will set that. Rather sensitive 350, and our landing altitude when we come in to Stockholm is going to be, he says, looks like we'll be landing on one right, so elevation is 138 feet, so we will call that 150. So that is all set. Excellent. Next then is to set up our FMC. To do that, we need to come over here and import our route. So if we request the route from SimBrief, it'll populate that in as so, and then we can go over to our FMC and we can bring up our tablet for when we need the performance calculation information. There we go. And we will go into here and we will request our flight plan. We will use the SimBrief route that we have put in. So we will check all of the details that are in here and check that they match up against our OFP. So cruise level is 350, which matches up there. Cost index, it says 60, which matches up there. Distance 800, and 1 nautical miles it's got on this, 823 on the OFP. So that's about right. We're expecting a slight difference because we won't have our departures and approaches in on this particular bit of routing information. Zero fuel weight 127.7, reserves 4.2. Let's have a look at the reserves. Block fuel 18.3. That's different. Why is that different? That's an interesting one. Am I in pounds on this thing? Let me just check. Has this reverted me back to pounds? I think this is reverted back to pounds. Let's just have a look there. Yes. For whatever reason, this has gone back to pounds again. So let me just set this up. Kilos, please. Thank you. Route request. Do that. That's better. And bring you back. 0 fuel weight. 57.9, 57.9, reserves of 1.9, which is correct, and a block fuel of 8.3, which is all matching up. So we will set that fuel, we will set that payload, and we will clear those off, and we will select that route. And that is now importing for us. While it does that, we will go into our performance tool. We will import from our OFP. Our takeoff runway today with the winds where they are is going to be 05 left. We will import from the OFP our aircraft details. Anti-ice is going to be off and aircon will be on. We will import the weather, which is 340 at 4, outside air temperature of 6, and 1036 for the hectopascals. We will calculate that. Okay, now that we have put that information into there, we can see that our route uplink is ready. So it has now put our route information to it has downloaded it and prepared it all. So if we now load it into the system, what you will see over here, I've just got page 2 up of the route. You will see this will now populate momentarily as we as the system imports the route for us. There we go. So that's our route now imported, and it has said there that the route data uplink is processing. We can clear that out and we hit activate. And generally I will go through and do the departure before actually executing it. If we have a look at the legs here, we've got it in there. We haven't got it executed yet, so it's still a dotted line. So we'll put our departure in first of all. So as we said, taking off 05 left from Manchester, and it's going to be the Pole Hill for Sierra departure. That has now added, as you can see here, these items to our departure on the legs page. So we've got all of that in there. So what we can do is we can check that against our route on here. So if we go to here and we zoom in on this, in fact, this doesn't show the, does it show the entire route? Stop locking my location, there we go. What is that first waypoint there? What? DO51 Golf is there. Do we not have, does it not show another waypoint in between? That's interesting. If we do it on the Navigraph map, does it make a difference? Oh no, it is there. Look. I'm just blind. There you go, so DE Delta Echo 05 left is correct, and we head on a track of 51. which we are up to 51 Golf, and then 179 and L 179H, and then we should be up to Pole Hill, which we are, and then Oxbow and RSAT. Hull, Ipsia, yeah, Oxbow, RSAT. So good. Okay, that looks like RSAT. Interesting waypoint name. Yes, there are some interesting ones for sure. RSAT, Tipter, Digby, Erlot, We'll give them hell as we approach Sweden. That's it. Rekna, Vaxit, Norham. Anyway, I am confident that this will have imported right. I know a number of times. Correct process is obviously to go and check your entire route, but I'm confident that that will be in there. So that is our departure in there. We can now execute that, and we now have a magenta line on our map there, which is all good. So that is our route in. Flight number is in. Runway is in. We now need to do our performance initialization. Good thing with PMDG is you can pull a lot of this information in automatically. So you just do your performance initialization request button here, and that will pull your information in. So while we wait for that, I'm going to take a quick sip of my tea. Tasty beverage. There we go. So it now says perf initialization uplink ready. So we want to load that data in, and that has now pulled all of the information in from the flight plan. Of course, you can type all of this in manually if you want. Cost index is 60, which we'd already checked, but we can cross-reference again just to make sure. Cost index of 60. Zero fuel weight 57.9, which is what it is. Reserves of 1.9 we know is right. Top of climb altitude, top of climb temperature, I should say, is minus 65. We can find that by scrolling through and having a look on here. Top of climb will be here, and minus, interesting, it's got minus 64. I'm not too fussed with a 1 degree variation on that, so we'll leave it as minus 65. Top of climb winds 353 at 72, which is correct. And gross weight is in and correct as well. The only thing that isn't in there is our plan fuel, which is we'll call that 5.6. So we will put that in, and that has now added that in. We'll execute that now. Couple of bugs here that I've noticed with this, and this existed in 2020. Lurkin and Workin, hello Rambog, nice to see you. Thank you for Lurkin and Workin, appreciated. This existed in 2020 as well with the 737. When you import this, it seems to ignore what your cruise altitude is from the actual flight plan. So we've got 350 planned. It's put in 390, so you just need to make sure that that is correct. So we will just update that to 350, so that's now in there. It says insufficient fuel, again, ignore that. I believe that is realistic to the 737. I don't know the logic and the reason behind it, but once the engines have started, it sorts itself out. We're not going to put in the departure or any, the arrival or any of that information. Pretty sure that's the same in P3D. Oh, really, Josh? Okay. Maybe there's a reason behind it that it inputs a different one. It obviously is saying there that the optimum flight level is 390. I don't know, but just something to check when you're setting up the FMC. Super. Okay, so we've put in the performance initialization. Perf limits, I never touch, just ignore them, basically. There is a lot of theory and information behind this, and you can go and change these should you need to, but the standards are always where you need them to be, really, so that is all good. Next one then is we need to take the information we've done from our performance tool here. So selected temperature we've got here is 48, so we put that into this box. And it says, based on our details, that we're going to do a takeoff 2 derated, and that's then auto-selected a climb 1 for us, which is fine. And then if we go into our takeoff settings, I always go to page 2 first and put in the runway details. So the runway winds we've got at the moment are 340 at 4 knots. Put that in there. Runway slope is 0.44. There we go. And then I go back to this page. It's going to be a flaps 5 takeoff. Our centre of gravity is 24.33. You can put that in the box if you want, but you can also just press on that box. It will fill it into your scratch pad down there. Press again, and it will automatically pull that across, making our trim 5.23. We've got 5.31 on here. That variation is correct because currently our flaps are set to 0. When we set that to 5, that number will update because it's reading our current flap information as opposed to what our final takeoff configuration will be. That gives us a V1 of 140, 140 for the VR, and 143 for the V2. There is a bit of a difference here, as you can see on our calculated speeds versus our performance. So 143, 144, and 145 on our performance calculator. That 3 knots is quite significant. 4 knots for the rotation speed. So I'm probably going to go with the performance calculator. I'd rather be fast than too slow when I'm trying to rotate. And V2 of 145. So we will put them in and ignore the suggested amount. So there we go. That is the takeoff reference in. So that is our route in. Our departure is now in. Our legs, we don't have any discontinuities. We've checked that. We're happy with the legs that we've got. We've put in all of our performance information, so that's all good. So next thing to set up then is our MCP. So we're going to turn our flight directors on. There we go. And we will set this up. So 145. Like that. We're going to turn on LNAV and VNAV. Our initial climbed altitude here will be matching the top of the SID, which is 5,000. That said, I haven't got any ATC, so I am just going to take us straight up to flight level 350. So we're just going to put that in now. And there we go, 350 in the box. Runway heading for our departure, we're off 05 left, so our runway heading is 051. There we go. Auto throttle is left at off at the moment. And then we need to set our auto brakes to RTO, which we have done. Our parking brake should be set, which it is, and we've got the red light on. We need to set our radios, which we will do. Where is my mouse gone? Ooh, just bear with me, my mouse seems to have stopped working for reasons that are unknown to me. Oh, there we go. That was very strange. I don't know what happened there. That was all very weird. Two-Tone Murphy is raiding with a party of 82. Well, good grief. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Murph, for your wonderful raid there. That is very appreciated. Right then. So, we are here in the 737-800. We're sitting in Manchester, stand 105. And we are going to be doing a flight over to Stockholm, Arlanda. Huzzah, don't panic, says Murph. Well, I won't panic. I will just say to everybody that has joined, I am not a normal streamer. I don't stream all the time. So I am certainly not as polished as the good Two-Tone Murphy is. But Murph, thanks very much for your raid. I hope you had a good stream. I caught a little bit of it as I was prepping for this, and it looked good fun. So, yeah, thank you for the raid. Yes, we're on stand 105 at Manchester. We're going to get into the air pretty swiftly because I want to try and concentrate the majority of this flight talking about descent planning, descent management, and approach into an airport within the 737. So we'll talk through some of the theory and everything like that to do with descent and approaching airports, speed management and all that sort of stuff. So that's where we are at the moment. We are just finishing off the last bits of our check, and we're going to start to push back fairly shortly. So performance information is already in. Toto, good afternoon. Casey Wingboy, hello. Viper Strike, good morning, as well as Crafty Tigers. Hello, thank you for your chat. Super Toto, thank you for your follow, as well as Crafty Tigers. Thank you very much. Okay, next then. We will do our pre-flight checklist. Oxygen we have tested and is 100% normal. Navigation, transfer, display switches, they're all on normal. We know they are. We haven't touched them. Window heats, we've already checked once, but we'll double check again. They are already on and going. Pressurization mode selector is set to auto and our altitudes are set correctly. Flight instruments are all set up. Speeds are in, headings in, altitudes in. For those of you that have noticed that it's set to flight level 350, we're doing this flight off network. We are just going to go straight up and get up into the air so we can start talking about descent and descent management. So we will ignore the SID. I've got unrestricted climb given to us from our wonderful non-existent ATC. Parking brake is on and engine start selectors are set to cut off. Excellent. So pre-flight, pre-start checklist. We're going to get the APU on now. So we'll get some fuel pumps on. We don't have any fuel in our center tank, so we don't need the center tank pump. Oh, we do. We've got a tiny little bit in our center tank, so we'll switch the center fuel pumps on as well. That APU is spinning up. We've got the low oil pressure light, which we would expect. And there we go. We're starting to get an EGT now on the APU. Flight deck door is closed and locked. We still have the jetway connected, so we will look to get rid of that. Bye-bye jetway. We will make sure all the doors are shut. So doors are now shutting. We'll give that a sec. No, they're all shut now. We will now arm all of the doors. There we go. Ground connections. There goes our jetway. APU is now up and running and available, so we will transfer onto APU power, and we can release the ground power. So that is now disconnecting. We'll check the parking brakes are on, which they are, so we can now remove the chocks. Lovely. So yeah, pre-flight checklist. Flight deck door closed and locked. Fuel is in with 8.3 tons, which is what we're expecting. Passenger signs are all switched on and they are seat belted in. MCP is all set up. Takeoff speeds are 143, 144 and 145. CDU pre-flight has been completed. Rudder and aeroline trim are zeroed. Good. Taxi and takeoff briefing. We are going to push back from here. We're going to taxi via the taxiways and we're going to take off. There's our briefing done. And now we need to let everybody know that we are going to be starting the engines up and pushing. So we will turn on our anti-collision lights. We'll also turn on the logo lights because we like a bit of advertising. Right then. Patrick Doyle, good morning to you. Hope you are well. Let's get some GSX going so we can prepare for the pushback. We'll use Jet 2's facilities as they generally operate off these stands. If any of the sounds aren't right, guys, if the sim sounds aren't loud enough or anything like that, please do let me know. Hello, Captain. We're ready for pushback. There we go. So we'll wait for that to get connected, and then we will start up our engines. While we are waiting for them, APU bleed will need to come on, and packs will need to go off to start our engines up. We'll also turn on our yaw damper now. We're going to turn the engine start selector to right. This is a condition from Boeing that if the right igniter does not work, then you don't go anywhere. This is a hard stop. So we will always do certainly the first flight of the day using specifically the right igniter for engine starts. And this is our first flight in this aircraft today, so we need to double check. We've got a master caution, which is the air conditioning, which is for dual bleed, so that's expected, so that's no problem at all. Technically bottom of the evening, says Patrick. Yes, it is. It is indeed bottom of the evening, but I'll take top of the morning as well. Right, where are we going? We are going to... We do not want to be facing... We want to face west? Yes, we do, actually. That's right. So we'll do standard jet, orange center line, facing west. So we will click on that. Hi, Iceman. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. Release parking brake. So that is that. Commence being push. All engines are clear. So we will start off by starting the right-hand engine. We will turn that onto ground. And we shall wait for it to spool up. We are looking for 25% on the N2 before we inject our fuel. (22, 23, 24, 25). So we will now put some fuel in. And while that spools up, we will have a bit of a look at our plane being pushed back here. Do love a bit of chase plane cinematic view. Lovely. So, wow, it doesn't always work by the looks of it. Jump back in here. So that's engine started. So we will now start the left-hand engine. Again, wait for the 25%. I'm not sure if I missed him calling for set parking brake, so I will Put the fuel in and we'll just see if we're still moving. Oh, no, there we go. In position, set parking brakes. Parking brakes are set. Waiting for a good engine start confirmation, so we will tell them that we have a good engine start. Lovely, there we go. So they are now doing their bits. We've got a second engine up and running, and we heard the potentiometer. No, not potentiometer. Whatever the word is for the magnetic hold on the engine starts, it's now flicked automatically back to the off state. This will magnetically hold until 56% of rotation, and at 56% N2 it will flick back to off, because at 56% the engine is fully ignited. We will stick our engine start selector back to, or igniter back to both, and tow truck is now disconnecting. We're not using any radios, but we will set our radios to 122.8 just because that's your standard Unicom. We will put in a random sport code and we will make sure that that is on, and is, yeah, so that's on, and we will set to alt off for the moment. Get the wave from Gerald over there. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your work. Right, lovely. So that is that after start checklist. Generators now need to go on. So we are now using the engine generators, which means that the APU can then come off, as can the APU bleed. We will turn the packs back on so that the passengers don't, well, in the weather that it is at the moment, freeze to death. Isolation valve goes to auto. Engine start selectors will now go to continuous. And we will check our recall. And we have a light. Why do we have a light? What is that one? Anti-ice. Aha, probe heats. Did I miss? I just missed that on my checklist. There we go. Probe heats need to come on. So that should now have checked that, and that is why we check our recalls. Excellent, no lights have stayed on. Generators probe heat, anti-ice is not needed. Isolation valve to auto, starts in there. I put my teeth back in. Engine start switches to continuous. Recall is checked. Double check the auto brake again. That is set to RTO. And now we need to check our flight controls. I'll get the speed brake lever out of the way so we can see. But we've got full rudder control, elevators, airlines, those are up, and spoilers go fully up and fully forwards, and we will set our flaps to 5 for takeoff. Super. Now, verify takeoff speeds was a little message there on our FMC. For those of you that were here at the beginning of the flight, you'll notice we had a slight variation in the recommended takeoff speeds. You can now see they've matched up with our performance calculation from the tablet over here. That's again going back to this reads our current config when it's putting in this information and our trim value. So because we had our flaps set to 0 at that point, it was basing the speeds off of flaps 0 takeoff. Now we've set them to flaps 5. You can see they've matched up. Our trim value has also adjusted to now match up with our performance calculations. So they are all correct. Excellent. That is everything. So we are now going to go and taxi ourselves over to the active runway, which is 05 left. So to do that, we will put on our taxi lights, not the APU, that's pointless. And I'll put the wing lights on as well. It's starting to get a little bit dark. There we go. We will release the parking brakes, and fingers crossed, we should start moving. There we go. Thank you, Manchester. So no more than 40% thrust to get yourself moving here. The NGs, unlike the Max, are a little bit. The engines are a little bit not quite as got as much oomph for idle. So with the Max, you'll notice you take your parking brakes off, and the thing will just start rolling forwards pretty much on zero throttle. It won't do that so much in the NG. So we shall taxi down here via Orange and Echo, and then probably Delta down to Alpha to get ourselves onto 05 left. Super. So as we will do that, we will just do our checklist. Flaps set for takeoff, and green. Flaps set to 5. Green light, and the handle is also set to 5, so they are all matching. Stabilizer trim we have not set yet, so I will do that momentarily. Okay, we'll just taxi down here. Once we get onto the straight before we have to turn off left onto Echo, I will do our stabilizer trim, which we said was 5.32, so about there. Try not to run off the taxiway while I'm doing it. Arrow 1036, I've got it set to 1013, so we'll just fix that. Ooh, that's too much. There we go, 1036. MCP is all set. V2 speed is in. VNAV, LNAV are armed. We're showing them as armed on there. We are showing them as armed on there, which is good. And we will press the recall button again. No lights remaining. That's all good. And no orange lights on our overhead panel, which is exactly what we are looking for. Excellent. So we shall get ourselves taxied down. I probably should have parked a little bit closer to the runway, but hey, well, who doesn't want to enjoy this lovely scenery from Indie Builds? They've done a really good job with this. Manchester is my local airport, and I have flown out of it many times, and it's very pleasing to get a very good rendition of Manchester Airport. Probably would have liked to have seen a little bit more interior modelling, if I'm honest, a little few more of the shops and bits of stuff on the inside. However, how often do you actually go and zoom your drone mode around in the inside of an airport? And I'm also very conscious that they've done very well on the frames. I say it's my local airport. I've gone completely the wrong way here. We'll cut down here onto... I'm just going to cut across the apron. Ignore me. I'm too busy talking and waxing lyrical about how good Manchester is, and I'm just going to completely ignore the taxi routes because, you know, that's who I am. Oh dear. Right, there we go. Back onto Delta now, and we'll just head down onto Bravo. But yes, very good rendition of the airport. So yeah, anyone that joined us late, we're just getting ourselves up into the air for the moment. We're going to get up into cruise. We're going to then taxiways are advisory, right? Yeah, exactly that, Melky. Taxiways are most definitely just advisory. But yeah, we're going to get ourselves up into the cruise, and then we'll start going into some theory and some learnings on descent management and planning and prep. So come down here, get ourselves onto taxiway Bravo. Actually, no, correction, taxiway. Well, Bravo goes off to the left here, but Alpha will carry on to straight ahead, which is what we shall do to go down to the holding point. So, whilst we are taxiing down this final bit, we shall do our before takeoff checks. Engine start selectors are set to continuous. We already checked that, but we'll just double check it. Landing lights, we can get them on now because there's no one in front of us and we know that we are going to be lining up shortly. Strobes can come on as well. They're set to steady at the moment. We will get them set to flashing. Auto throttle, we can arm. We haven't selected toga yet, so we will arm that. Transponder needs to go to TARA, which it now is, and speed brakes, spoilers not armed, flaps are right. Weather radar we need to put on, and I'll put terrain on the first officer's side. And I'm going to do a takeoff from this. I can't be bothered to go all the way around to the start. We certainly don't need it in this plane. So we shall get ourselves on. Okay, 05 left is what we are expecting. Nothing coming that way. Nothing that we can see on the runway that way. We will scroll ourselves around here.
Runway 05 left.
05 left seen. 05 left shouted at by our VRAS. And 05 confirmed. And our heading that we have pre-selected matches up. Right, in that case then we are ready to go. So we will set our throttles 50%. Call stable, and hit toga, and off we go. Airspeed alive. 80 knots, center the yoke. 100 knots. V1, rotate. Up we go. Positive rate, gear up. Bit of a crosswind, not much though. See you later, Manchester. And we will get the autopilot engaged. And why don't we have a bit of a look at our takeoff here. Fantastic. Right, where have we got to? So we will, as I said, we're just going to do an unlimited climb. So I'm going to set the altitude intervene. We'll get our flaps up in a minute as our speed increases. And we have a master caution state issue, so that is expected. So we only had a very small amount in our center tank there, so that has now run out, so we can switch off the center fuel pumps. We've also taken off, so we can switch off our runway turn-off lights and taxi lights. We're up in the air now. Flaps up speed, so we can put our flaps up. Engine start selectors can go back to off. We'll turn our logo lights off. There's no point burning the bulbs out. And we are on our way up. Lovely. So our next stop is, are we leveling off? We are indeed, but it's speeding up. Let's just check to see what it's doing. It's doing FMC speed. It is adhering to our constraint. So we will just hit our altitude intervene button again. That's changed us to FMC speed, and we should start to increase in altitude now. Yeah, there we go. So we are there we go, that's better. Yeah, so that will now use our FMC speeds. We're under 10,000. We will stay at 250 or below, and then up to higher speeds above 10,000. We have gone above our transition altitude, so we will select standard. Fantastic. We are on our way up into the cruise. We'll get above 10,000. I will switch the landing lights off, do our other bits, and then we will start talking about some descent preparation. We'll just quickly do our after takeoff checklist. Engine bleeds are on and doing what they should do. APU bleed is off, and packs are on auto. Landing gear are up, and I would select them off, but I've still haven't fixed my binding here on my controls, so I can't move them to the off position, but normally they would be in the off position. But my Bravo is set up so that it will constantly just keep it in the up position, so I can't move it down at the moment, but I will get round to fixing that at some point. And flaps are up, no lights, and indicating up. Auto brakes can come to off now, and we are just getting to 10,000 feet. There we go, we'll call that 10,000. Landing lights can then come off, and we'll let the passengers out as well so that they can go and use the facilities. Lovely. So we will leave it in this mode. One Boxy Bingo, good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining. Mrs. TPH, yes, only a suggestion in my opinion for taxiways. Yeah, completely agreed on that. Lovely. I see my bar at the top is still not working. I changed some settings on that to, I thought, make it work. But apparently that is still not working, so I don't know why that bar is not working. That wasn't working in the last stream. I will continue to play around with that one. Nope, no idea. Right. Anyway, you'll just have to live with the fact that the bar's not working. Sorry about that. After takeoff checklists are all complete. So now we are just into our cruise phase. So let's talk a little bit about our descent planning. We just jump back into the cockpit for a second and we can have a look here at our progress. So we have 776 miles to go. Current estimated arrival at just before 5 o'clock Zulu, but that doesn't include our arrival. So we've got about 2 hours to, or probably an hour and a half to talk through our theory and everything. Right. Okay. So, descent planning, descent management, why is it important? And what is it more specifically? So, descent planning and management, it's the process that we go through to decide when and where we are going to start effectively trading altitude for speed whilst meeting all the published constraints on that we have on our charts on arrival and so on. So it's the point where we want to descend and we want to head down into the airport, obviously. But the planning of it is, when do we want to do that? Now, in modern jets with FMCs and everything like that, it will tell us what our top of descent is. But we also still want to do the manual calculations, and it is only telling us what that top of descent is based on the information that we put into it. It's only as good as the information we provide. It's that saying of garbage in, garbage out. If you put rubbish information into it, it's going to tell you something completely different to the answer that you would get if you manually calculated it with the correct information. So at the moment, obviously it's telling us our top of climb. As we get within, I think it's 450 miles of Stockholm, it will start telling us when our top of descent is. But we can do some work to obviously manually check that it's right as well. And also we need to take into account potential shortcuts and potential other factors that the FMC might not know about as we're coming into Stockholm. So generally the process for descent planning, this happens before the top of descent. We need to decide where the descent must start to meet any altitude constraints and things. If we've got a stepped in approach down to say 20,000, and then we're going to hold at 20,000 or a flight level 20 for a period of time, we need to make sure that we're descending at that point. It might mean that we end up descending a lot earlier than if we were just going to do a straight line in and do a continuous descent from the start of our approach into Stockholm. We will review the stars that we may be given in any approach and the expected runway. So we'll work out and we'll have a look at the information, what's on the ATIS at the moment for Stockholm, what are we expecting to land on. We'll have a look, we'll identify any tight constraints there might be or any likely problem areas, or indeed any shortcuts that we may well get. Stockholm's not the best example in terms of shortcuts because the arrival that we've got is pretty much a straight line anyway. We'll come on to see that in a bit. But there are other airports where potentially shortcuts are quite likely, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a little bit. And then also we need to obviously consider how we're going to do the descent and what processes are we going to use to manage that descent. So are we going to just let the plane, the VNAV, take control of this? Are we going to come down and just have everything plugged into the FMC and let it manage that descent for us? Or are we going to do it in a slightly more manual approach? Is there a reason why we might want to take a more manual approach to controlling the descent? And then as we hit that top of descent, we come into the descent management phase. So we're monitoring whether the aircraft is on profile, whether or not we're too fast, we're too high, are we too slow. We'll be looking at whether we're in the right vertical mode for the energy state that we're in. And I'll come on to energy states a little bit in a few minutes. We'll keep on top of this right from the very start. So we want to make early, small corrections rather than getting completely out of shape and then having to make big corrections to try and get ourselves back on profile. As soon as we can identify that we're coming off profile for whatever reason, we want to be trying to fix that as early as possible. And we also want to do as much as we can to keep our workload low, especially as single pilots. We're talking about flying in the sim here. We're not talking about flying, obviously, real world 737s or anything, but in the sim, you're a single person pilot. You're effectively doing what the FAA, the CAA, any flight organization says needs 2 people to do this. This plane is rated for 2 pilots. You need to have 2 pilots in the cockpit. And yes, there's been talk recently about, can we get away with having single pilot ops on some of these? If anyone says that to you, as far as I'm concerned, they're completely wrong. These shouldn't ever be single pilot planes ops flights like this. No, you need 2 pilots in there at all times. So that's what descent planning and descent management is. We'll go into some more of the details as we go on. One of the key things with descent planning and proper descent planning and proper management of that descent, and this is where it comes into keeping that workload low so that you can effectively manage the descent. Incorrect or inadequate management of all of that will lead to a loss of vertical situational awareness. Potentially, you're coming in, you haven't set everything up right. You're a few thousand feet too high. You're scrambling around. Okay, I need to throw the speed brakes out because we need to get slow so that I can get this back down. All of a sudden, you're trying to scrabble around and do 16 different things at once, and you're losing track of what altitude am I at? Is the FMC still following my constraint? Have you put it in VS mode, which means it will completely ignore the constraints and it will just keep going down to wherever you need it to potentially? So it's all about that planning. That, again, old saying of piss poor performance or piss poor planning will lead to piss poor performance, basically. If you don't plan and prepare correctly, your performance at actually doing the descent will suffer because of that. It'll also lead to rushed and potentially unstabilized approaches. So you get to that 1,000 feet and there is a set of criteria that you need to meet when you're at that 1,000 feet, which says, am I all of these things? Is this a stable approach to come in and carry out a safe landing? If you don't meet any of those, then, or if you don't meet just one of those, you should theoretically initiate a go around. And we'll come on to stable and unstabilized approaches in a little bit. And either of those 2 situations, so a loss of vertical situational awareness or that rushed and unstabilized approach, increases your risk of having incidents and accidents, and even potential what are called CFIT incidents. CFIT standing for Controlled Flight into Terrain. Afternoon, Eddie. Thank you very much for your message and your chat. Good afternoon indeed. But yes, CFIT, Controlled Flight into Terrain. So if you're behind the plane, if you're trying to do 17,000 things at once, there is potential chances that you're not paying enough attention and you do end up having an accident. interesting stat for you. Well, I find it interesting. But yeah, interesting stat that goes in line with this. Approximately 70% of rushed and unstable approaches involve inadequate management of the descent and or approach profile and or incorrect management of energy level. So yeah, the reasons for these unstable and rushed approaches, 70% of those are caused by bad descent approach, descent management, or descent planning. The other 30% are going to be things that don't necessarily you can't necessarily account for. So your bad weather, your wind shear. If you're wobbling around all over the place, your unstable approach may come from a huge gust or wind shear or something along those lines. But the things you can directly affect, the things you can directly change, is making sure that your descent is as textbook as possible. Effectively, what you want is your descent to be really boring. You want to sit here and the plane just go down and do its thing. You don't want to be having an exciting descent. That's just a recipe for bad things to happen, basically. So what are our different types of approach, I suppose, is the next thing that we want to have a look at. And there is something that is becoming more and more common and more utilized across certainly Europe, and there are now initiatives within the US to do this, and it's been around for a while. I don't know the exact dates or anything, but it's certainly becoming more of a thing now. And if I bring in 1,000 to go for top of our climb, yeah, we're just getting up to 35,000 feet now, which is great. I bring in this and we have a look at this. What I'm talking about is a continuous descent approach. This is specifically aimed at... Hello, Impossible Face. Nice to see you. I always brief my descent about 10 minutes outside of top of descent. Way easier to not fall behind the aircraft that way. Yes, exactly that. We'll come on to that in a bit. But yeah, about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you do it too early, your ATIS may change, your runways may change in that time. 10 minutes is just about the right amount of time to go through, set up your FMC, make sure all your information's right, you got the latest ATIS and everything. Perfect timing to do that. So yeah, continuous descent approach. This is, I mean, as you can sort of see from the graph there, a concept of you start your descent and you don't stop descending effectively until you hit the ground. There's no pauses in it. Standard approach up to this point has been this element here, where you come down a little bit, then you go along straight and down a little bit more and along straight, and you sort of hit waypoints and gates effectively that you will sort of go along at level altitude for a period of time between those different waypoints. The reason that they are looking at operating this continuous descent approach, that's I don't know if you saw the wobble around in the background there, but there was it's a thing with I think Chase Plane at the moment, and I do actually have an update coming on Chase Plane. In addition, I've done it again. Jave kindly reminded me about this in the last one. We're above flight level 300 now, and I've forgotten to change my bank angle. But one thing you should do while you are up above flight level 30 is change your bank angle to 10 degrees. Yeah, it's obviously a lot thinner up here. You don't want to be doing turns at 30 degrees of bank with the thin air that you've got up here. So we'll change that over to 10. So yeah, slight oversight for myself there. we'll bring this back in. So, yes, continuous descent approach. This is specifically focused on generally the last bit of the approach. So you can sort of see you've got this 11 kilometers out here. So yeah, sort of somewhere around that mark is generally what it's aimed at, and it's aimed at specifically noise and noise control and environmental features. Basically, it's better for the environment. So the aim is you will get to this point, you will set your throttles back to idle, and you will use your profile to manage your speed. So you will use your angle of descent to keep that speed up. So we're using S fuel, we're not burning as much energy and not putting as much bad emissions into the environment. And in addition, you're not using your noisy engine. So it reduces the noise for the local populace around as we get lower to the ground. So as you come in at sort of, your final 15,000 feet or so, you're keeping it nice and quiet. And the only point when you start putting your engines on is as you get into that final sort of 1,000 feet or so, and doing that final approach in, and it keeps it nice and quiet for the planes there. So that's your continuous descent approach. And a lot of operators have started, where possible, utilizing this right up from cruise altitude. So if we can get, we're up at flight level 350 at the moment. If we can plan in a descent, and we'll have a look at our charts in a bit, but if we can plan in a constant route of throw the throttles back to 0 and just descend down and keep going straight down without any pauses, again, it's the most fuel efficient way of doing it. So a lot of operators are trying to bring that in as standard operating policy, really, where possible. It's not always going to be possible. You've got many considerations and many factors to take into account, especially in Europe. You've got incredibly busy airspaces. You might have planes under you. You might have to stop for SID constraints, all sorts of things like that. So it's not always going to happen, and it's not always going to be possible, but we can plan for it as best we can to be able to do that. So taking that into account, we've then got to look at the different approach types that you have and the energy states that they bring with them. And if I bring this in, fairly basic diagram, but it gives you the gist of it. It's a little bit small, actually. Let's just zoom in a bit there. So you've sort of got three main sort of approach and energy types. High energy, which you can see is that one at the very top there. You are high. To get down to your runway, you need to point the nose down quite considerably. You're too high, you're too fast, potentially both. Usually caused by a late descent or shortcuts. And we'll, as I've said, we'll talk about shortcuts a little bit later. You can fix this with an early speed reduction, potentially using your speed brake or leveling off using VNAV speed. So we'll come on to all of those bits a little bit later. You've then got your normal approach, normal 3-degree approach. So generally, the stars that you get will be based on a 3-degree decline all the way down. So where you start and as you come down, and generally the constraints will be based on those as well as you get to them. So that's your normal one. You're on path. You're in managed speed. There's minimal thrust changes. You should just be going down at a fairly constant thrust. And this is our reference state, really. This is where we want to be. Again, excuse me. Aiming for that sort of fairly normal 3-degree constant descent all the way down. The other one you have is maybe a low energy approach down here. So this might be where you're below the path or slow in terms of speed. This can be caused by putting your flaps down early or gear down early. There may have been a reason you wanted to get down early, and again, we'll come on to that. You might have actually wanted a low energy approach for a certain portion of it on the off chance that you get a shortcut or something along those lines. You can fix this with thrust. You've got your you've always got your thrust there. Ideally, we don't want to. It burns more fuel. It affects the environment more, and so on. So low energy aren't always great, but they're generally better than a high energy approach. So we kind of want to be, if we can, at all times, your normal approach or a low energy approach. Want to try and avoid the high energy approaches as much as we can. So we've talked a little bit about the types of approach here, and we're going to focus on sort of our reference approach, our normal 3-degree descent, and we want to talk about calculating when our top of descent is. Now, we will see here, top of descent is now showing, so 510 nautical miles, 1634, so just over an hour at the moment, and that's again based on, we haven't put in our arrivals and so on. Friend to all says the continuous approach implies that the top of descent would occur later than standard. Is that correct? Yes, generally. You will potentially be held a little bit longer to match in with that continuous approach. So yes, it would be potentially a later, which would put you more into the realms of a high energy approach. But the way it is planned out, the ATC are given guidelines on what they're supposed to do, and if they're operating through a continuous descent approach, they are advised to advise you as a pilot that you'll be doing that. They're also the points where you will be told to start your descent for a continuous descent approach are based on your speed, your plane type, and so on. So they're not looking to put you into a position where it's a challenging descent or a high energy descent. It will still be based on a normal approach. It'll just be done slightly later because you wouldn't have any steps in there where you would necessarily need to pause for a bit of time. So yes, done later, but still should be around the 3-degree descent path, effectively. So we've got our FMC here telling us that our top of descent is in 497 nautical miles, which is, what are we talking there? 113, 118 or so miles into Stockholm. For the ease of this, I am going to quickly put in our approach information in. We will come back and go through the full details on doing this, but just to give us an idea here, we're going to be landing in on runway 10 right is currently active, so we will do that. Okay, and we'll do the LTOC 7 mic. So if I just put this arrival in here quickly, 01 right, LTOC 7 mic, and we'll just execute that. So that's now put that in. We should have some vectors in there. Yes, we do. Good. Because we're going to make this easy, I am just going to get rid of those vectors. There we go. Ranbog. As it varies a lot between different planes, how slippy they are, it's often more important to tell that the pilots tell ATC when they are ready for descent, as the pilots know where the top of descent for CDA is better than ATC. Very true. Also, this is where instruction, when ready, descend comes in. That's a really good point. Thank you for that, Rambog. Yes. So often if you're on VATSIM and so on, you will get, as Rambog has said there, that when ready, descend to whatever altitude. That is very much when you need to start decreasing in altitude, you start at the point when you are. That doesn't mean start descending now. It means at the point where you've calculated you need to descend. But yeah, you're completely right that it's important that the pilots say when they're ready for descent. So if you have calculated for whatever reason that you need a longer descent than potentially is what standard, yes, correct. CDA equals continuous descent approach. Thanks, friends to all. If you've calculated that you need longer than standard for whatever reason, potentially you'll have to call up the ATC and say, Firefly 003 or Firefly 301, whoever, standing by for descent, something along those lines, or ready for descent, just to give them a little nudge to say, hey, I need to descend now, and they will most likely accommodate that unless there's a reason they can't. You plane beneath you or something along those lines, or intersecting track with another plane crossing over later on, something along those lines. So calculating our top of descent, we've put in our arrival, and it's now saying 483 nautical miles to our top of descent. It's not changed it too much. That's generally down to how Stockholm Arlanda is. The approaches are very efficient and fairly much straight lines coming in. So it's not changed it a huge amount, but we've got 130 or so miles there that it's calculated that we need our top of descent for. So the general way that you do the manual calculations on a descent is our altitude that we start at times by 3. So if we just have a look here, we're going to be starting at flight level 350. You times that by 3. That gives us 105. So that's, you take the first two numbers, 35, and you times that by 3. That gives us 105 nautical miles. So that's our first starting point there in terms of how far we need to descend down from flight level 350 down to our landing altitude. However, we've also got our speed as a factor and our wind as a factor. Thank you for the lurk, Zith. Good to see you. So yeah, we've got our speed as a factor and our wind. So our reference speed that we want to be using is 200 knots indicated. Why we use that as a reference, I'm not 100% sure. If anyone's interested on that, I can go and get the information. I don't know the theory behind why 200 is our reference speed, but I just know that that is the number we use in the 737. So 200 knots. Any 10 knots of indicated airspeed that we are above when we start our descent, we need to add another mile on. So we're currently cruising along here at about 270 knots indicated airspeed above that 200. So 70 knots in excess of that 200. So we need to then add another 7 miles onto our distance. That's 105 plus 7, 112 miles. And then we've also got wind as a factor. Now, a lot of the time, I don't necessarily calculate the wind factor into this. You can, and you should, if you're following the exact real-world processes. But obviously, again, we're a single pilot ops. We don't always have as much time, especially if it's a shorter flight, to do all of that. But for reference, we go on to page 2 of our progress page. You will see here that the 737 in the FMC, zoom in a bit so everyone can see it, we get our headwind here and our crosswind component here. So we can see at the moment we've got a 21 knot headwind and we've got a 53 knot crosswind from the left. So majority of a crosswind at the moment, but we do have a 21 knot headwind. That wind factor, with a headwind, you're going to be a bit slower. So actually you want to take off some distance because you're actually being slowed down by that headwind. So for every 10 knots of headwind, theoretically you should take off 1 mile. So effectively with 23 knots headwind there, you would take off 2 miles on your descent. Opposite way round for a tailwind. If you've got a tailwind, let's say we got a 23 knot tailwind, we would be adding another 2 miles on because we're being pushed along by the wind. So we're going a little bit quicker over the ground than if we didn't have a tailwind. Now, tailwinds are certainly have more of an effect or a more of a detrimental effect on our descent, and we want to make sure that we're taking into account that tailwind, especially if it's a strong one. So that 2 miles can be quite important if you've got a tailwind. Headwind, if you're being slowed down more, that's not so much of an issue. You can just shallow out your descent a little bit to give yourself that extra room. So headwind I'm not as concerned about as a tailwind. But that's effectively how we plan it. So at the moment here we've got a headwind 23 knots, so that's 2 miles that we want to take off this. We've just added 7 miles onto it for our speed at 270 knots. So take the 2 off that, that's 5. And we've calculated from flight level 350, 105 miles is our distance that we need to descend. So all in all, we're 105 miles plus it's going to be another 5 miles for our speed and wind factors here at the moment. So we would call that 110 miles. Now, again, here we are, we are still flying along. We're doing this very early at the moment. So if we go back here and just have a quick look at the map on where we are, you see we're coming in here at the moment. We've still got to turn up to here and then come in, and then we're going to be coming down here. But we're not going to be descending till somewhere around here. So that's a fairly similar angle, but the winds are going to have changed and stuff. So we're doing this quite early, but I'm just giving you the idea of how we do this, and then as we get closer, we'll properly go in and do it. But what I would then do is I want a visual reminder of that is the distance that I've calculated for our descent. So we're looking at this. We've said 110 miles. So I'm going to put myself in a fix ring to that distance to work out where, or to give myself a visual indicator of where I'd calculated that descent to be. So to do that, we want to type the buttons correctly. Why's that E not working? There we go. Put that in, and we're going to put in a 110 mile range ring. So that's now put that in. And if we go up here and we go into plan mode, and if we zoom out a bit, we should find our range ring eventually. Oh, it's a bit too far away still. Let's do this one and we'll step through our plan. Legs, step. There's our range ring. No, I put that in right. Huh. I don't know why it's not showing the range ring there. That's very interesting. So that little green dot there is our top of descent. I don't have the range ring showing. That's very strange. I'm surprised by that one. I would have expected the range ring to show up. Let's try doing a nearer one. So if we did our 20-mile range ring. So the 20's shown up. Ah, there it is now. That's a very strange bug. I would have expected that to have shown up. Okay, well, don't know if that's a bug or actual. I think that's a bug in the potential PMDG variant, but don't know. Anyway, so what we can see from here is, I don't know if I can I make this, let's just try going back here. Huh. How very strange. So that's our 20-mile range ring. Okay, well, it is there, but it's only showing on certain zoom distances at the moment. I will do some investigation into why that might be and if that's accurate or not. But what we can see here is, so we have calculated our top of descent to be 110 miles away based on altitude that we're at, winds, speed that we're traveling. And you can see here that actually the FMC's top of descent is a little bit after that. So we've actually calculated it's going to take us a little bit longer to descend than the FMC has. So potentially we would look at there, okay, we've taken into account the winds and so on. Maybe that's what's causing it. We're going to want to potentially request and start our descent a little bit earlier than when the FMC suggests. So that's the way we calculate it and what that does on that, and you can see how that takes that into account. Now, what we can also have a look at here is requesting our descent winds in here. So we haven't actually pulled in our descent winds at the moment, so that might change this top of descent. So why don't we do that now? We'll have a look at this and see if that then changes where it thinks our top of descent will be on the screen here. So we've obviously manually calculated it with those winds in that we're experiencing at the moment. There we go. So they're in now. We press load on here and that will load the winds in. And okay, so it's now put that in. It hasn't really changed our top of descent very much. So it's given us there 78 knot wind from 357. So that's sort of coming in this way. So it's going to be more of a crosswind than a headwind for sure. Basically coming in that way. So we execute that. It's recalculating. So it hasn't really moved our top of descent. And if we go back to here, top of descent, 391 miles. And we are 518 miles away, which is a bit of mental maths here. is 129. So it's calculated 129 miles. Now our range ring is 110 miles as the crow flies. So that's our straight line. Now we've obviously got in here a bit of a curve here. So our actual track miles that we've got will be a little bit higher than that. So you can take into account sort of both calculations, the FMC and yours, and it gives you that point of, I know I need to be descending around here. We're not too far away from that, but we've obviously got a few extra track miles because we're coming down this area here and then going in. So that range ring is just a good visual indicator, and that's the reason that I put that in there. It's a little bit more visible than just the little top of descent circle that you get on there, that little green circle that says top of descent. It's just that little bit more visible, just a bit more shouty to basically say, hey, think you're going to be getting close to descent here. You will also get FMC messages coming in to say how you need to reset your altitude and things like that. We'll go into that in a bit. So that's in. Super. Okay, so what do we want to talk about next? Let's have a look here. So let's talk a little bit about the different descent modes that we have. So obviously we've talked about the FMC a little bit already, being calculating our descent for us. It's using that approach that we've put in and our approach chart. And if we have a look here, we can probably have a look at our charts here. Arrival. In fact, probably an easier way to do this is if I press this button and bring up Navigraph. And if we have a look at our charts here, and we'll throw this in on here. So we're going to be coming in through here into LTOC. And we can see here that we need to, depending on which arrival we're doing, and we are planned to do the LTOC 7 mic arrival. So we need to be at flight level 110 by LTOC. Correction, we need to be flight level 110 or below by LTOC. And that will be in our FMC. So if we go down here and have a look at legs, there's LTOC, flight level 110 or below. So we've got that planned in. And you can sort of see here that we've got KSD, which is our previous waypoint. You can't see because I've just realized. There we go. Let's zoom in here so you guys can see that with the Navigraph. I told you I wasn't a a usual streamer or even a very good streamer, so apologies for that. But you can see there we go. In the FMC, we've got a constraint in here of flight level 110 or below in there. So the FMC will work to achieve that. And you can see we've got KSD here. We will still be at our cruise altitude at the point when we get to KSD. We've got 113 nautical miles between KSD and LTOC. And then from LTOC, we've got, another 6, 12, 6, 12, 20, 40. Yeah, so we've got well over the distance that we need. So our descent is going to start between KSD and LTOC here. So we will come in and we will basically descend down to where we need to. Now, based on the then further constraints. So you've got here at Sierra Alpha 854, you've got flight level 80 or below. So that is this one here. We need to make sure that we can meet that constraint. So we're going to come along and we're going to cross these. So when we get to 820, this one here, we're going to be, you can see there's a slight difference in the font here. So the smaller one is the predicted altitude that we'll be at. So flight level 093. These are hard constraints. So they are in a capital or a larger font size than the non-constrained altitudes. So this is a predicted altitude that we will be at the point when we get to Sierra Alpha 820. These are constraints. This one is in magenta because this will be our next constraint. We've got no constraints. Find you'll be doing some self-vectoring onto the ILS as well then. Yes, Rambog, you are completely right. I have the self-vectoring portion of this, which will indeed give us a little bit of an extra challenge. In fact, I've got this Navigraph set wrong, so let's just quickly change that and add that in there. Yeah, so we've got some self-vectoring as well here. So yeah, we'll come on to that in a moment. But we've got flight level 110 or below. It will then estimates that we'll be at flight level 093 to reach our constraint there of flight level 080 or below by the time that we get to 854. And then if we go on to here, we've then got an expected altitude of flight level 006 at LNA. So that is here. So as we reach the end of the approach here, it expects we'll be at flight level 060, just above our transition altitude. We've then got this 18 miles of self-vectoring. So this will take us to the start of the ILS approach for runway 01 right. And here on 01 right, the start of the ILS here is 4,000 feet. So it expects us to be at 4,000 feet or above at CI 01 right, and at 4,000 at the start of the ILS exact, which is here. So we're going to come in. If I just do this, you can see we're going to come in. We're going to vector into here. It wants us at 4,000 or above. We'll probably aim to be at 4,000 there just for ease. If we know we're there by that point, we definitely know we're then going to be there by the point when we get to the start of the ILS there and start of the glide slope. But yes, we do have a bit of self-vectoring from here. Now, because we've removed when we put the arrival in, we removed this vectoring. We had a discontinuity between Elnar and this waypoint here. The FMC will just work it out for us. If we'd put in, or if we'd left that discontinuity in fact, let's go back and change the arrival. Let's do something else quickly. Then change it back and see what it would do. So we're going to do 1 right, LTOC 7 mic, execute, go back to legs. Let's move some bits around there. KSD, LTOC. Yeah, that's correct. ASD, LTOC, it'll recalculate those. Yep, good, they're right. So then we've got here LNA, then we got this discontinuity. It's still got these constraints in there, 4,000 or above and 4,000. Sorry, I'm just checking what the plane's doing here because it seems to be wobbling about a little bit. Let's take it back out of plan mode just so I can see what's going on. Yeah, okay, we all look to be fine. So yeah, getting back to this. At this point, you got LNA. It's still going to be descending down, assuming that we've got on the MCP the right altitude set. And it's still going to be aiming for there, but it doesn't know exactly when we're going to get there. So it's going to aim, we're going to have set 4,000 on our MCP. It's just going to keep descending to that point, but it does have this discontinuity. So it doesn't know exactly what altitudes to expect or what altitude it's going to be at. But it does know that if we carry on this descent path, at 3 degrees, by the time we get to LNA, based on the distance, we'll be at flight level 066. So, where are we now? So we have 312 nautical miles to our top of descent. So just about 45 minutes or so. So let me have a look at my notes here and we can go through some other bits. Boom, boom. So differing modes then that we have for descent. So if I get rid of Navigraph for a minute. On our PFD here, you've got this section at the top. In fact, I've got a really good image that I found. Now, this is a 777, but it's pretty similar. There's not a huge amount of difference between them, but it's a really good understanding of the differing bits of information that you've got on your PFD. And focusing on the top part here, these are your mode enunciators. So the three things that you've got at the top, where it says FMC at the moment, FMC, LNAV, and VNAV path. There are mode enunciators. That's what mode this plane is in at the moment. Left-hand side is your auto throttle enunciation mode. The middle one is your roll enunciation. So what roll mode are you in? And then this one here is your pitch mode enunciation. This is your source of truth here in terms of what the plane is currently doing. Common mistake that is made with certainly the Boeings. I'm not 100% sure how it shows in the Airbus. I haven't flown an Airbus in quite a while, but obviously they're slightly different. But effectively here, this is your source of truth on the left-hand side. The MCP up here doesn't necessarily mean that you are in that mode. So for example, yes, VNAV is lit up. That doesn't necessarily mean VNAV is active. I'm just trying to think, is there a way I can show? Yes, I think if I... No, I will show you later on. I can't think of a way to show you at the moment. But when we took off, actually, if you remember back to the point where we were at takeoff, you will have seen that I pressed LNAV and VNAV as we were setting up the MCP, and the green lights came on. But you'll have seen that LNAV and VNAV were in white underneath. They weren't in green, and they weren't on the top line. They were on the second line down. That means they were armed. Now those green lights have stayed exactly the same. They are green. You've pressed those, so they've lit up because you pressed those. Those functions are initiated, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they are active. So don't take this particular panel as a source of truth of what the plane is going to do. When you are looking at it, this is your source of truth. And you'll see as we are coming down and as we are going in to capture the ILS, you will see VOR lock will come on and GS will come on, along with the approach mode lights. When we click the approach mode, doesn't mean that we're captured and we're active on the ILS. It just means we've armed the approach mode, and it is armed here. Until it changes on this, you won't be in that particular mode. So that's a plane. That is a function of the plane that often gets confused. Certainly by simmers and certainly by new pilots who are just learning the 737 and so on. They look at the light and go, oh well, hold on a minute, VNAV's on, so excellent, I'm in VNAV, I must be following it. Or LNAV, I'm in LNAV, great, it's going to turn me left and right as needs be. Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the case. Is there a way I can... no, I don't think there is. I can't think of a way at the moment, but I'll show you. I'll come back to that and show you later on. Another thing to remember, and I've been very good at forgetting to do it, but it just so happens we are on the same direction that we are flying in the same direction that we took off. But with the Boeing, unlike the Airbuses, but with the Boeing, your heading mode selector is always manual. So is that turning? No, it's just accounting for some wind change, I think, there by the looks of it. But your heading selector is always manual. So when you make a turn, when the plane turns to the left or to the right based on your flight plan, you need to make sure that you are matching your heading mode up. This is just good practice. It doesn't have to be done. You know, if you left it off there, it's not going to do anything unless you activate heading select mode. But if you get a if you get a radio call from ATC and they say Firefly 301, turn left heading 360 degrees, you go, oh crap, okay, I need to go and do that. If you hit heading select and I've got my current heading set to 100 degrees, I'm going to start turning right straight away, and then I need to turn around. Alternatively, if I go and adjust my heading first of all, they've just told me, oh, turn left to heading 360 degrees. I've now got to scroll all the way back through here and then come round to 360 degrees. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. That takes me longer then to respond than if it was here. Okay, I'm on my heading. He's told me to turn to 360, spin that round, hit heading mode, and away we go off to the left. So it's good practice to always keep that centered. Airbuses, they're a little bit more automated. It just does it for you. When you turn the heading knob, it will always start at the point of the direction that you're heading in, unless you've manually set it previously, and then it will be on whatever you last had the heading set on. And I think if you come out of heading mode and back into lateral navigation mode, it will automatically reset the heading back to whatever you're on based on your lateral navigation. So that is that. Vertical speed versus level change versus VNAV path and VNAV speed. So you've got a selection of different descent modes that we will see and we will go through as we are descending. VNav path is your sort of main mode. It is your sort of ideal mode. So it is following the path that you have specified in here. So based on your FMC, based on all the information, and if we were in the Max, we would have a VSD that would be able to show you our path that we have got down, that we have set into the FMC that we are planning to follow. And so what the plane will do is it will manage its pitch to ensure that you follow that path. Let me just double check something with my notes here. Make sure I'm getting this the right way round. Yeah, so VNav path, it will the priority that it is following is the path that you've set out. It requires good preparation that we've talked about already. It requires putting those in, making sure those constraints are in and correct according to the charts. It will use idle thrust whenever possible, unless it needs to apply thrust to, for whatever reason, it will aim to always be at idle thrust. If you do a speed intervention on here, so if you need to intervene your speed, you're given a specific speed by ATC to follow or something along those lines, then that will break VNav path. It will change the mode automatically into VNav speed. But the intention is that VNav path is effectively your optimum way of doing this. And this, again, comes back to talking about, obviously, an ideal planned, pre-planned, we're going to descend at this point all the way down, continuous descent down. We've put all of our information into the FMC. We want to just be constantly descending down. We don't want to necessarily have issues and thoughts, issues and suddenly get into a high energy descent or something along those lines. We want to be planning this out. We know exactly how this is going to go. We want to make this a really boring descent into Stockholm. VNav speed, if for whatever reason it can't maintain the path, it will then revert into VNav speed. So whatever speed you've got set in your descent, either manually up here or in your descent profile here. So we've got our descent here. We've got it set to Mach decimal 795 or below the transition altitude, 307 knots. So it will follow that until we get to 10,000 and then it goes to 240. If for whatever reason we are off the path, can't follow the path, it will revert to VNav speed and it will then prioritize speed. It may add thrust at this point. So if it needs to keep the speed at a certain, or it's aiming to keep the speed at a certain level, so it will add thrust in where needed. It is a useful mode if we're high or in an unstable approach, but it's certainly not used for necessarily a continuous descent approach in terms of it's not going to prioritize that path. So if we've got a path set up that is all the way going straight line down and trying to do that continuous descent, it will potentially ignore that path, and it might even, if it's maintaining a speed, it might actually level us off at points to maintain that speed if it needs to. You've then got VS mode. Now, VS mode is your vertical speed mode, as you would expect. It is a very manual way of telling the plane, I want to descend at this number of feet per minute. It can be very useful if used in the right way, but it needs to be used in the right way. It needs to be monitored very carefully. VS mode, it only controls your vertical rate. It doesn't have any speed protection. So you tell it, I want to descend at 3,000 feet a minute. It will descend you at 3,000 feet a minute. If you've got your flaps in, your speed brakes up, or let's say 5,000 feet a minute, you will very quickly get into a scenario where you're potentially going to overspeed, or certainly brake. If you're under 10,000, will brake your 250 knots. Again, it all depends on the plane that you're in, how slippery it is. But V-speed needs to be carefully managed with a manual speed mode generally, and keeping an eye on the plane, because it will relatively quickly run out of control if you're not careful. So you want to be using your speed brakes and your flaps where appropriate to manage your speed as well as your vertical speed if you are using that mode. And sometimes it is just needed if you get into a really busy approach, you've got lots of things going on, you're being vectored left, right, and it says descend to whatever altitude and quick as possible, something along those lines. You could do that all through your FMC, but the time it takes to go in and go, right, okay, I need to go into descent, I need to change my descent from an economy descent to something else, I need to change my speed here to say, oh, actually I want to go quicker than that, to descend quicker. That takes too long. You're suddenly into a point of which is the quickest method to getting to where we need it to. And it might be that actually vertical speed is a good method for doing that. You also, however, have level change. Now, level change, the pitch will be controlled, and so it will maintain whatever speed you tell it to. So if we press level change, you will select the speed that you want it to maintain, and it will use pitch to do that. So it will slowly, if we go into level change mode, it will bring back the auto throttle slowly back to idle, and it will leave them at idle. And once you are back at idle, whatever speed you have set, so if you've set 250 on here, it will use the pitch of the aircraft to maintain that speed. So that's what level change does, and that prioritizes, but that controls your speed there, and it ensures that you will always be at that speed. It's not great if you're looking to obviously be at an altitude at a certain point, something along those lines. So level change might not be appropriate there. So that is the different modes, and I think the easiest way to do this is to show you. So where are we now? We are 201 miles from our top of descent, which is 1641. So we've still got about half an hour exactly to our top of descent. Excellent. Has anybody got any questions at the moment? Rambog. Level change, or open descent on the Airbuses, is my favourite. Higher speed equals higher drag and descent rate. as for hitting targets, you just slow down and the descent rate will slow down and vice versa. Yeah, that is very true. You can manage it and you get a really nice, certainly in the Boeing, we just had a glimpse of it there because we were slightly off our altitude, but you get a nice little green banana that appears, which will show you the altitude that you've got set in your MCP. It shows you where you're going to get to, and yes, if you change your speed, it will adjust where that banana is, and it will say, okay, well, I know that I need to be at 5,000 feet at KSD, for example. Go into level change mode, set your speed to the point where it goes. Similar in the Airbus, slightly smaller BOD indicator. Fair enough. Stu Snape, hello, good to see you. Boeings are still as clear as mud for me, lol. I'll be watching the recordings over and over until I get it. No problem at all. And if you ever, have questions, just use old Two-Tone Murphy's Discord. And I am more than happy to answer any questions or jump on a call or anything like that if you ever want to. And that goes for anybody watching this stream. If you've got questions, again, I'm not a 737 pilot. I'm just a guy that spends too long reading the ops manual. So not all of this will be correct, but I fly it a lot. I know a decent amount. So I'm happy to help where ever needed for anybody that wants it. So yeah, flight level change can be a really good option to use. It all depends on what sort of approach you've got, what approach you're incoming, and also that anticipation of the type of approach that we've got coming. Stockholm isn't a great example to show you. I'm just trying to think. Malky says, we also get to see Murph fly this on a Thursday. It will be a learning experience. Indeed, we do. I'll be interested to see how he gets on. He did fly on our last VATSIM Thursday. He did a pretty good job with it, I have to say. So he's doing pretty well. One thing I haven't covered yet is shortcuts and planning for those shortcuts. And in fact, if I bring back up Navigraph, one of the other things to take into account when we are planning for an arrival is any potential shortcuts you might get, because at the moment we've told our FMC that we want to follow this path down, so we want to be at LTOC, and we want to be somewhere below flight level 110 at LTOC. If I find a different airport, where would be a good example? Let's go. In fact, yeah, if we have a look at Heathrow here, and if we have a look at where is it? Lambourne. Which there is an arrival here somewhere. Hold on, I will find it. No, it's not Heathrow, is it? I'm looking at the wrong airport. That's why. I know what I'm looking for. Gatwick. Open these up. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. So, EDDM. I'll have a look at that one in a second as well. Thanks, Malky. But we have a look here. So we've got Gatwick. So let's say we're coming in from Gatwick, and or we're coming into Gatwick from, let's say, I don't know, Dublin, something like that. We're doing a quick flight in, or even Edinburgh, down into Gatwick, like we did on our last flight. We come in at Zurich. We're at flight. We have to be at flight level 140 by Zurich here, and we come in, and we're flying down here. Now, our next flight constraint here is Willow, flight level 070. We've got some speed constraints of 250 at 2 Foz and 220 at Holly, but our route is Zurich, Knight, 2 Foz, Holly, and Willow. So we're coming down, we're going past, and we're curving back round to Willow, and then you'll come in to then land in at up here and land in at the airport over there. Now, if it's not busy, there's no way that ATC are going to say, oh, you've got to go all the way down to Holly and all the way down to here. Now, the thing with shortcuts are, and this is where you need to have a good understanding and look at your charts, is you could look at this and go, well, hold on a minute. It's not busy coming into Gatwick. We're late at night, for example. We know there's not many planes coming in now. Or you've just got experience of flying into Gatwick previously, and you go, I know that Gatwick, they often give us shortcuts. So what we might find is that we get to 2 Foz and they say, proceed direct Willow. Or they might turn us direct Willow halfway between 2 Foz and Holly. Now, our FMC, if we're in VNAV mode here, our FMC is going to look at this and go, okay, flight level 140, I need to be at that altitude then, so I know I'm going to be here. My next constraint is flight level 070 at Willow. I am going to write myself a path at whatever descent rate it needs to follow this and go from here to flight level 070 without stopping. So whatever degree of angle down that you need to achieve that over this distance of, what's that, 15, 35, 40, 50 or so, 50, call it 60 miles to descend that 7,000 feet, it's going to be a fairly shallow descent down. But you're going to get to 2 Foz and be at whatever altitude it determines is right to achieve that with the then 17, call it 25 miles that you've got between 2 Foz and Willow. If they suddenly say, or even halfway through here, proceed direct Willow, you haven't got the distance from the altitude that you'll be at to get to flight level 070. Hey Bence, good to see you again. Thanks for joining. So you need to take into account that there is a potential shortcut going on here. And what you might say is, well, hold on a minute. I know that there is a potential shortcut here, and I know that I need to be at flight level 070 by Willow. What I'm actually going to do is tell my FMC, can I be at flight level? I've got no restrictions here. I can do whatever I want. As long as I'm cleared by ATC to go down to that altitude, I can put in, and it might be that you're told certain altitudes by ATC, and they might guide you in with the intention of you're going to be descending. They might know that they're going to give you a shortcut already, so it might be that they say descend to flight level 070 by 2 Foz, and then they will descend you down. I'm good, thank you, Bence. I hope you are well too. But if they haven't said anything and they've just cleared you to flight level 070 or whatever altitude it is, I'm at this point going to go, they might give me a shortcut here. I want to be at that altitude by that point. So I might put into my FMC manually, get me to flight level 070 by 2 Foz. Or I might use VS mode and change the descent rate and use that indicator there to have that green bar that comes up on there you go, you can just see it there, and use that green bar there, have that sitting on two FODs, for example. Amalki said EDDM was another good example. Let's have a look at Munich here. Let's see if we can find a good approach that will give you shortcuts. Yeah, there's quite a few constraints on this one, so yeah, you may well get shortcuts here. I don't know that one as well, so we'll leave that for the moment, unless those out and back arrivals are a good source of shortcuts. Oh, okay. Okay, so here, in terms of roadkill coming in, and then they might cut you in to one of these earlier on if they can. I see what you mean. You come in from roadkill along here, and your standard route is all that way, but they might give you a shortcut there. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Super. Okay. So, with that then, we are now 118 miles from our top of descent. I am going to take 2 minutes for a bio break before we get into our descent, so I will be back momentarily. Okay, I am back. So, 1642 Zulu is our expected top of descent time, so that's about 10 minutes away. So, we've already done a bit of planning here in terms of our approach. So, we've had a look at Navigraph, we've had a look at our descent, we've calculated when we think the descent will need to be. We can see our range ring here. All right, see you later, Bents. Thanks for joining. But we can see here we've got our range ring coming up. It's a little bit further out than top of descent, but it just gives us that good indicator there to sort of say, hey, this is where we thought we were going to need to put in our descent. So we've got that in. We can see our top of descent coming. We want to be thinking about our descent here. So we've got a checklist to run through. So top of descent checklist. First thing we need to do is altitude pre-select. So we need to change the MCP. Now, in this instance, I'm going to leave it for a minute because I want to show you something. But normally we would set this to either whatever altitude we've been cleared to, or if we are offline like this, we can just set it to the top of the ILS effectively and let VNav do its thing. But I'm going to show you a few bits of information and modes and things that the Boeing does. So I'm just going to leave it at 350 for the minute. Pressurization, we check our landing altitude is correct, so 150. Runway has changed slightly since we did it, so 01 right, elevation 138, round that up, 150 will do nicely. We then need to verify our landing data is in. Now, we haven't done any of that yet, so next thing is the old Boeing is somewhat manual, so we need to have a look at our ILS approach and put in all of our radio frequencies here. So down here on this particular type of radio panel, this is our standby, this is our current active. Our standby is currently set to a VOR, so we just need to change that to an ILS, and then we need to put in our frequency, localizer frequency for runway 1 right at Arlander is 109.35. So you type that in, 109.35. And we change the active to standby, so that's put that in. And then we need to do exactly the same on the other side, 109.35. Helps if I could actually type. There we go, 0935. Swap that over. So that's in there. Do you always round up for the landing altitude, or do you use the normal rounding rules? So yeah, 150 was effectively my closest. If it had been 124, 124, something like that, I would have put it down to 100, but it was over 125, so I stuck with 150. MSA, terrain, mountains, antenna, skyscrapers, towers, how to avoid. Effectively, your chart should do that for you. If you're following the approach, your chart should be avoiding any terrain issues that you have. Just jumping back to this one. So we've put in our landing frequencies. We also need to put in our final approach course on our MCP, which is 004. So we will put that in. We also then need to check our minimums and put our minimums in. In this case, we are doing a Cat 2, so Barrow 238 on the Barrow. I'm in radio mode. 238. So there we go. I've got the wind wing. EFIS is in here, so that's why I am turning that without doing anything with my mouse, but I'm just using that minimums knob there to set the minimums. Ramborg, need to head out. Good luck with the approach. Short, except for excerpt from the METAR. Tempo 2000. Oh, excellent. Yes, okay. We will have a look at the METAR in a minute. So, final approach course is in. Radio frequencies are all in. Auto brakes, we need to do our performance calculation. So we do that by coming over here. We do performance tool. And we go to landing. We're going to use auto brakes 3. We're going to import the weather. Oh, we need to select the runway first. 01 right. We need to import the weather, and we do the calculation. Invalid maximum computational weight. Would help if I put the actual weight of the aircraft in. I didn't import the aircraft details. That's useful. Barrow QNH is 1014, so we will just do the calculations there. So we are going to be stopping in time. Now that runway condition is dry. Now, based on what Rambog has just said, I don't think that's the case. So one of the new features with the 737 for 2024 is we have functional ATC and CPDLC and so on. So we can actually get our ATISs through here. So let's pull in the current ATIS. So we put in our airport here. We're going to select the source of VATSIM and we will hit send, and we should, fingers crossed, get a message back telling us what the ATIS is. I hope. It should come back. We'll give it a sec. There we go. So bing bong, we've got view ATIS message here, and we've got a little message indicator there. So if we click this, here we go. So information alpha, time 1550 Zulu, runway 1 right, in use, departure runway 1 left. So we've got transition level of 06 of 6,000 feet. Winds calm, 310 at 11 knots. Visibility 10 kilometers. View clouds at 800 feet. Scattered at 2,500. Temperature is -4. Dew point is -10. QNH is 1014. So in a Boeing, you can preset your QNH, so 1014. So we will do that. You just turn this knob. It will stay in standard mode, but it will preset your QNH here. In an Airbus, I don't believe you can do that. You might be able to do it in the McDo, but you certainly can't do it with the knob. If you turn the knob, it will change automatically from standard mode. So we've got that. Runway condition is 555, which means that it is wet, less than, I think that's less than, when, is that less than 25? Condition 555. 666 is fully dry. Yes, thank you. Here we go. 555 is frosty or wet. Braking deceleration normal when wheel braking effort. So basically it is a good condition of runway. So we will call it wet effectively here, and we will calculate that. It doesn't change the distance too much. So we've got our calculations in there, and we'll throw this tablet over here. So what we then need to do is put this in here, and we want to have a look here at our flap speed. So we're going to do, what did we say that weather was? 300 at 10. I'm going to do a flaps 30 landing here. There's a little bit of wind going on, and a little bit of wind going on. So what I found is flaps 30 is slightly better for windy approaches, depending on where the wind is coming, but it just gives you a little bit more control. So I'm going to do a flaps 30 landing into here. So that gives me a speed of 144. To do that, I flap config 30. Calculate. It says VREF 148, which is about right. So we've got a wind correction here of value of 5 knots, so that would make that 149. It says 148, so I'm happy with that. So that approach reference and information is what we need to put in to there. So that is all good. Now, where are we in terms of our descent? 38 miles. Okay, so we're coming up to our top of descent now. Now, I said that I wanted to leave the altitude at 350 for a minute or two to show you the something that the Boeing will do. So we've talked a little bit about the different types of approach. So your high energy approach, your normal approach, your low energy approach. Now, reasons that you'll get into a high energy approach. So this approach here where you're high or you're fast or potentially both is if ATC can't descend you at the point when you want to. So we would be at this point, we're coming up to 30 miles, a couple of minutes from descent, 4 minutes or so from where we need to descend. We'd probably be looking to give them a shout fairly soon and say, hey, standing by for descent. But let's say we've got another plane underneath us, or in 10 miles, there's a plane going along at flight level 320 that's going to cross underneath us, and they can't descend us. So at that point, they're going to say, no, you've got to stay high. Maintain 350 for now. We'll let you know when you can descend. Already, you're slightly annoyed because that's happened, and you've planned out this perfect descent path, and it's already starting to be scuppered. But it will put you into a high energy approach effectively at some point, because we're going to need to descend and we need to get back onto this path that we have done. Now, the ways we can then go and minimize our effects of this particular situation is to reduce our speed. So we're traveling along at the moment. Our ground speed is 425 knots. We are traveling along at a certain, 425 knots, doing a certain number of miles forwards every minute. And what we want to do is start descending, but ATC have said we can't. ATC have said we're not allowed to do that yet. Okay, so how do I minimize? How do I reduce the effect of me traveling forwards at an altitude that is higher than I want to be? Well, I start reducing my speed, because if I reduce my speed, I'm traveling less miles forwards. So I'm reducing the effect of Firefly 301, maintain Mach decimal 80 or greater. Thanks, Rambog. I'm going to ignore that one. Yes, you might get into an annoying situation where you're given a speed constraint as well. Yes, go away, Rambog. You need to go and do things. But no, genuinely, thanks for coming in. Thanks for your help as well. But yeah, so one thing assuming you've not been given a speed constraint by ATC, which would be exceptionally unhelpful, but you can reduce your speed. Now, the Boeing FMC helps us out with this automatically. It starts doing it for us. So we're coming up to our top of descent here now. We've got 12 miles to our top of descent. Any second now, we will get a message that says reset MCP altitude. So it will give us probably around 10 miles, I think it is. It will give us a little message and say, hey, you're about ready to do your top of descent here. You probably need to change it. I'm not going to be able to go down in altitude until you tell me I can go down in altitude. So we'll give it a second. We will get that notification come up to say reset your MCP altitude. So we're set at 350. This isn't going to do anything. This will continue at this altitude until you tell it otherwise. If we have this turned down before we reach our top of descent, it will automatically start the descent. We are in VNAV path. Our VNAV path is active. here. There we go. So reset MCP altitude has come up 5 miles to go. We're in VNAV path. If we change this down, it would start following the path that we have planned in, that the FMC has in its settings, in its flight plan. But we've been told we can't descend yet. Okay. Well, I can't reset my MCP altitude, so I'm going to change that. Right. We are now 1 mile from top of descent. The plane's going to go, well, hold on a minute. I need to descend, but I can't. I'm just going to keep going then. Now, you will see a couple of things that have changed here. Our mode here, our pitch mode, is in VNAV alt. We are at an altitude, so the VNAV is holding the altitude constraint. You will also notice the throttle is now coming back, and you will see on the left-hand side here that we have the speed setting that is in the FMC. The FMC speed is reducing, and it is bringing it down as slow as it can, basically. So at this level, we haven't got a huge amount that we can do about it. You can see there's our buffet zone. We can only go down to like 220 knots here. But what it's trying to now do is minimize the effect of the fact that we are still at 350. And we can see the effect that we're having here on these two sections here. So this is our vertical path. If we had started descending at the right time, we would now be nearly 3,000 feet lower than we are at the moment. And you can see that vertical deviation. So we're 3,000 feet high on our path at the moment. And it is doing the best that it possibly can to manage this and alleviate this. And we've now got down to basically the minimum speed we can, which is 220 knots. And this is just gonna keep increasing now. So now let's say we get the call. Firefly 301, descend to flight level 200, let's say. Excellent. Okay. So we set that, we press altitude intervene. So we now kick it into gear. We've set flight level 200. Now, we are not on our path, but we can't be on our path. We are away from our path. We're 5,000 feet now off the path that it has expected. So it has put it into VNAV speed mode. And what it is now doing is it is using pitch to bring us back to the speed that it is now set. So it's now heading back to the target speed that we've got in our FMC. So the 0.795, which is up there, and it's using pitch. And look, we're at 4,000 feet a minute here. It is properly throwing us down at the ground. And this is normal. This is safe. Passengers won't really notice. They might notice we're going down a little bit quick from ear popping and pressure changes and things, but this is a completely safe descent. And it is bringing that path back. So if we now have a look, our vertical deviation, we were 5,000 feet off. It's now using that speed, getting us as quick as it can, and it is bringing that back 2,900, 2,800, and it's working really hard in VNAV speed mode to get that speed up, bring us as fast as it possibly can to catch up with our path. So the Boeing will help you out there. And again, we're in this managed mode here. Now, while we've been looking at that, we've missed our top of descent checklists. So let's just quickly do that. Descent checklist, pressurization, landing altitude, we've already checked. Recall, we press the button just to make sure that that's all fine. No lights are have been left on. Auto brakes, we need to set those. Set them to 3. Approach briefing, we have basically completed, and I'm also going to put our engine start selectors onto continuous as we're coming in. Altimeters, we've set 1014. We will just check the weather again, check that's not changed. We've got some scattered cloud, reported scattered cloud in our ATIS at 2,500 feet, and it is -5 outside air temperature in there, and I can see a few clouds over there. So I'm actually going to throw our anti-ice on, I think, just out of precaution, he says. There we go. Okay, so anti-ice is on just out of sheer caution. I can see a few clouds over there. So now, what has our FMC and what has our plane and our autopilot modes managed to do? So we're now getting here, look. We're now back within 1,000 feet. So it's got that speed up. It's now trying to maintain that speed. We've gone below our transition level now. So we're now at speed mode. So 307 knots is our descent mode. It is maintaining that speed, and that is bringing us back to the correct, or it's working to bring us back onto our path mode. Now we can give it a hand. We can throw out some speed brakes if we want. It hasn't told us it needs it at the moment. I'm going to say that we're cleared further down. So Firefly 301 cleared to flight level 070. So I'm just going to change that. So we will throw that in there. So it's working now. Look, we're now within 600 feet. So it's done. This VNav has done a great job of managing this descent for us. We are really almost back on profile now. We've kept this descent going. We need to be at flight level 110 or below by LTOC. At the moment, we're 500 off our path. If we get to the point where it needs a bit more help, it will say drag required. But it still believes, and it's still working out, that we can probably make that constraint. So it hasn't asked us for any drag. You can give it some extra drag. So if we want to put the speed brakes out, we can throw the speed brakes out there, and you'll suddenly see that vertical deviation there is now dropping off considerably. We can see 400, 300, and if we put that back in now, so that's just giving it a little bit of an extra boost. And we're now pretty much back on profile here. So it's now bringing the nose back up, and there we go. We're back on path as is. So that is great. So we're coming in now. We are now back on path. Look at that. We are spot on path. Vertical deviation. We're 33 feet off, and it will just work to manage that at that speed. So we're now at 17, flight level 170, and it is just coming in here. So you can see our approach coming in here. So there's LTOC. Auto brakes are all set. So this is what I'm talking about with, we really want this to be a boring descent. Now look, we've changed back here on our vertical. We're on to VNav path now. We were on VNav speed. Now the path is the priority. So it is working to maintain that flight path that we need to. And that's exactly what we want it to be. We want this descent to be pretty boring. We can get into all sorts of challenging issues and things here. You know, maybe they suddenly say, hold on a minute, no, we need you to maintain this. And they suddenly say, Firefly 301, maintain flight level 110. And we get into the LTOC and we stay at flight level 110. And because of other planes or for whatever reason they might want to keep you high, we will then have to look to manage that and use one of the different methods that we have talked about, be it V-speed, reducing our forward speed, or potentially requesting extra track miles. That's something you should never be afraid to do. Never get into a panic that you are too high or off path or anything like that. You can only do what the plane can do. You can only do what is safe to do. If you get into a situation where you've got 20 track miles left and you know you're too high, or 50 track miles left and you know you're too high, tell ATC, say, I'm too high here. I'm not going to be able to slow down and descend at the rate that I need to get to the start of the glide slope. I either need more track miles or I need to hold. And ATC will help with that. ATC will work, and they understand what plane you're in. The controllers know what your aircraft type is. They will work to try and get you to the right altitudes at the right point. But it doesn't always work, especially if they're busy. You get some of those busy, large area controllers that are controlling lots of different airports. They might not have enough time to concentrate exactly on you, so that you might get potentially forgotten, something along those lines. Now, we've come down to LTOC. You can see that the speed is now descending down here. So we're getting to the point now where we're coming up to 10,000 feet. 10,000 feet, we've got a constraint of we need to be 250 knots or below. In this case, the plane set 240 knots or below. So what the plane has now done, it's maintaining that path. We've made our constraint. We are below flight level 110. But now our next constraint here is speed. So it is bringing back that speed. We are at idle. We're on VNAV path. We're maintaining the flight, the vertical path that we have got in the FMC. We now need to meet this constraint. So by the time we get to 10,000 feet, we need to be at 250 knots or below. We're also getting to 10,000 feet, which means landing lights can come on. I'm also going to switch on the fasten seatbelt sign so that the cabin crew and passengers know that we are coming in. Minus 13 on the temperature. We've got a few clouds going on here, so I'm definitely happy to keep our anti-ice on. Now, what did I say? Heading mode. I haven't adjusted it. I'm very good at forgetting that. We're also now below flight level 300. So we want to turn our bank angle selector back up to 30 degrees of bank, because we can do those bigger banks now. And ATC, they will be expecting us to do a 30-degree bank. So we want to be changing that now so that the FMC and the turns that we do are at the rate that they expect us to turn. Now, we are now turning. We are still on path. We are below the 250 knots. We are now below 10,000 feet, which is great. We're going to say ATC have cleared us now. Firefly 301 cleared to 4,000 feet, which is the start of our ILS, which is great. Now, I think we had a discontinuity. Yep, so LNA, then CI01 right. So this is our vectors. So our approach, as we saw, our approach path has vectors in it to the approach. I press this button. Oh, this button. There we go. Yeah, so we're going to come in here, and you can see LNA. It is just manual vectors. So we can do this one of two ways. We can use our heading, which I've forgotten to adjust again. We've turned angle. I'm very good at forgetting to do that. So we've now got that. We can use heading mode if we want, or we can just do proceed direct. And it may be that you're told that as part of your vectors when you get there. What that does give us is quite a sharp angle to turn in on here. That's probably, well, it's pretty much a 90-degree angle to turn in on. So it might be that we want to actually go into heading mode just for a bit when we get to LNA and just smooth out that turn a bit. So that's what I'm probably going to do here. So we are coming in. You see, we are still on our path. We are still doing what the FMC expects us to do. So we're set to 4,000 feet. The plane will not go below that. We are still in VNAV path. We are doing the speed that the FMC has got set in there, which the next speed constraint that we've got is 149 knots when we get on to, that's basically our final approach speed as we get onto the ILS. So we are coming up to LNA now, as you can see here. And when we get to LNA, what I will do, I have set this to, in fact, I'm going to set it to 170. And I'm going to take us out a little bit to the right, basically down here, and then bring us in as we do that. So I will get rid of Navigraph so you can see what's going on. So we've got the heading set to 170. When we get to LNA, you may well have got something along those lines in terms of an ATC call as well at Firefly 301 at LNA, proceed heading 170, something along those lines. Right, so we are just arriving to it now. 3, 2, 1, there we go. Autopilot flashed at us because we had a discontinuity there. So it told us, well, hold on a minute, I don't know what I'm doing. I am just going to proceed in the direction that I'm supposed to be going in because I've got a discontinuity. But now we've changed. We're now in heading select. We're still on VNAV path. So it will still maintain our vertical path down. So we are still going to be descending, but we are heading on 170 to give us a slightly less of an angle. In fact, 170 might have been a bit excessive. You can see we need to be here. So I really want to be going sort of over there. So let's say we're going to do this. What we're doing there. Let's do 145. There we go. So we'll do 145. So that will bring us in here. Now we've got 4,000 or above. So as we come along here, we're still at 6,000. It is still descending us on the path that it is expecting us to be on. So it knows the distance to CI for 01 right. And we are still slowly descending. But because we're not proceeding directly, it is keeping that descent rate slower because we're not decreasing the distance to that as quick as it is expecting. It needs us to be at 4,000 by FI 10 right. So we're not descending as quick as it would expect us to. So what I'm now going to do is we now get a call from, so we're now below, we've now dropped below standard barometric pressures. We've passed that transition level of 6,000 feet. So we need to press that button. So now 1014. On the plus side, current pressure in Stockholm is basically standard pressure, which is really handy. But now we get a call. Firefly 301 cleared to CI01 right, or cleared for the ILS approach for 01 right. Proceed direct CI01 right. Okay, fantastic. So we are going to go direct back to CI01 right. So we put that in there, we press execute, and now I want to go back into LNAV mode. And this now the FMC is now doing that. And now, look, all of a sudden, hold on a minute, we're turning, we're at 5,200 feet. This glide slope is above us. We are a little bit low now, which is fine because it will manage it. It's back in VNAV path. We're at the speed we need to be. And it will manage our approach in here. And we've also been cleared for the approach. So at this point, we need to check that we've got an ILS signal, which we do. We can see that there, and we're 22 nautical miles out. And we've got, we are waiting for the glide slope and localizer indicators to appear. We've got our glide slope. And we've got our localizer. You can see the little diamonds just there. So a little white diamond there, little white diamond there. Once they've appeared, we can press the approach button. And this goes back to what we were talking about as well here. I've armed the approach. VOR lock and GS are both in white. So approach mode is armed, but it doesn't mean that it's captured. It doesn't mean that it's active. We're still in LNAV and VNAV path now mode. So we are now back. We're a little bit low on our path, but it will the plane will sort itself out. It's going to work that one out. So we're at 4,000 feet now. We're set to 4,000 feet. It's not going to change. It's not going to go any lower than that. So it'll hold us at 4,000 feet. Once we get there, it'll probably change to VNAV alt. It's lowering our speed. That's in the FMC. So it is working out. We need to be at 149 knots by that point. It's asking for a bit of drag here. So actually, all right, probably a good point. Let's bring in some flaps. So I'm going to bring in flaps 1 here. That will give us a bit of drag, and you can see it's dropped that speed now automatically down to flaps 1. But we've armed those. They're not active yet. We're still on VNAV path. We're at 4,000 feet. Nicely in preparation. And ideally, your best scenario for capturing your glide slope is to always come into it from underneath. You have to be very, very close to the actual glide slope altitude for it to capture. And being above it, you're always going to potentially be chasing it down. So coming in from underneath it is always a little bit better than not. So we're at flaps 1. It says drag required, which I disagree with. I'm just going to clear that. I think that was an earlier message. So we are nicely coming in here. So we can now see, as we come into the range of the localizer, we will start to see this little diamond move in. It should turn purple as well as the localizer signal comes in and we start to intercept it. 15 miles out now. Probably going to add a little bit more flaps in now, flaps 2. There we go. So here's the diamond coming in. So localizer is coming in. This will change. There we go, into purple. We've captured the localizer there now. Single channel coming in. We are at about 10 miles out now, 14 miles out. I'm going to turn on my runway, turn on lights and taxi lights, get them done nice and early. So we've now captured that glide slope. So there we go. And we can see the runway in front of us. There's one left and one right where we're. Don't forget your heading. Yes, very good point. Put your heading into place in case you get any descriptions. I am so good at that. Also, our go-around procedure is fly the straight ahead. So that's always useful to have your heading. Your go-around is programmed into your FMC. So you'll see in a minute when we capture the glide slope that it will arm LNAV for the go-around. There we go. So VNAV out. We're at 4,000 feet. You can see this diamond coming in now. It's going to capture that glide slope. And look how close you have to be to the glide slope to capture. There we go. So that's now captured the glide slope, and you have to be pretty close to it. So if you're coming in from above and trying to catch up with it, it's always descending. It's a harder job to capture that glide slope from above. It's always better to come in from underneath it if you possibly can. Excellent. So there we go. We've captured the localizer. We've captured the glide slope. Heading is set. You will now notice MCP speed has been activated. We are now being controlled by the speed on here. We've captured the ILS. It's now up to us to manage that speed. So we are now, what are we, 10 miles out? Okay, so we're going to maintain 180. We probably would have been told, if you've got lots of planes coming in and things like that, maintain 180 to, say, 8 DME and 160 to 6. So we're going to do that. We've only got flaps 2 at the moment. We're going to go down to flaps 10, and we will keep them out. We can keep that flaps 10 active. It just gives us that drag ready to slow us down because it's within the speed constraints. We're still looking to do 180 knots, and flaps 10 at 180 knots. Your flaps 10 limit is 210, so that's no problem, but it just means that it's ready. It's there and ready for us to do that descent, because we're obviously quite quick at the moment. Right, we're at 8 nautical miles now, so now we've been told we can drop down to 160. So now we change that speed on our MCP to 160, and you can see we're dropping, but it's not a massive drop because this plane is quite slippy. So actually, I'm going to throw the gear out at 8 nautical miles as well. That will give us further drag. And actually, let's throw in some flaps 15 here. And they said 160 till 6. So we're coming up on 7 nautical miles. Now there's 6 nautical miles. Right, super. Now I want to throw it down to minimum approach speed. So I do that. That's our ref speed here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to flow in flaps 30 as well to get us into that final configuration. So there we go. That is now the final configuration. We're doing that. We're at 2,000 feet above. Now, we need to make sure that we are stable on this approach. And what I mean when I say stable is in fact, what I am actually going to do is, as we are at 1,600 feet, I am going to completely ruin the immersion here. I'm going to pause for a second because I want to just very quickly talk about what a stable approach is. And I had some notes on it, and they seem to have vanished. Bear with me. So, with a stabilized approach, what you are looking for is by 1,000 feet, you need to have all the following criteria correct. So the aircraft needs to be on the correct flight path. Well, we know that is. We're established on the ILS. Only small changes in heading and pitch are necessary to maintain that correct flight path. So we know that we're on it. We're not too high. We're not diving down to catch up with the glide slope, as we've talked about. Airspeed is not more than 20 knots from your VREF, and we'll have a look at that momentarily, the aircraft is in the correct landing configuration. So we got to 2,000 feet. I was throwing the gear out, flaps 30 are down. We're at 1,500 feet. We know that the plane is in the right configuration now. Flaps 30 are out, and they're indicating. We got all of our lights on. Gear are down. Everything is correct. The only thing we haven't done at the moment is arm the speed brakes. Sink rate should be no greater than 1,000 feet per minute, and we'll have a look at that in a second when we get back into the plane. Power setting is appropriate for aircraft configuration and is not below the minimum power for the approach as defined by the operating manual. Not so much to worry about that with that in the sim, but that is the case. We need to make sure that we've got the right setting of power. We'll have a look at that in a second. And then if depending on the type of approach we're doing, in this case we're doing an ILS approach. ILS approaches must be flown within 1 dot of the glide slope and localizer. There's other things about Cat 2 and Cat 3 and circling approaches, but in this instance we're concentrating on just a bog standard ILS approach. So within 1 dot of the glide slope and the localizer. And so that is your stabilized approach. Anything that is, if you're ticking all of those, if anything is across, if anything is false, it initiates an instant go around, whatever height you're at. If you get to 1,000 feet and you're 40 knots too quick, you should initiate a go around at that point at 1,000 feet and call go around, and up you go into the sky. So let's jump back into the cockpit and we'll have a look at this. Here we go. So, coming up to 1,000 feet. We're 1,500 feet at the moment. We are on our VREF speed. We're 5 knots above our VREF speed, which is fine, which is what we're expecting to be for wind correction. We're exactly on the glide slopes here, so that's great. We know we're in the final configuration. Flaps 30. Gear are down. We can see the runway. No visual issues or anything like that. We're only doing small inputs, and our thrust is exactly where we expect it to be, about 60% on the N1. So as we get to 1,000 feet, we check, are we stable? Yes, we're stable. And at this point, depending on what you want to do, you can leave it to minimums. Our minimums are 230 feet. So you could leave the autopilot in, but we're stable. It's put us on a trajectory here. The trim's all done for 1,000 feet. So at this point, I'm going to take the autopilot off, and I'm going to take the auto throttle off.
Approaching 0,
and
1,
we are
right.
going to try and land this. So, as it said, 1 dot on that glide slope or the ILS or the localizer is grounds for go around. So we're just looking to maintain that on there. We're getting a little bit to the left. We got a little bit of a crosswind, which is pushing us out, so we will just manage for that. And we're a little bit high here, so we will just drop that. We're also a little bit fast, to be honest with you. This probably should be a go around. I've gone above 20 knots, really above, but we will manage this.
100 minimums.
That wasn't a very good approach, to be quite frank.
30, 20, 10.
We're a little bit left. Oh. Watch my other one for a better example on how to do it. Watch my video from last week. So we got a little bit fast there, and we got a little bit blown to the side by the crosswind that we weren't properly countering. 60 knots. Decel.
Remaining.
We're going to turn off here at this point here. Manual braking. Take the auto brakes off. Speed brakes up. Flaps up. So there we go. We have landed. It certainly wasn't a textbook landing, but that is why we do this on the sim. This is why we practice it. And I can certainly recommend if you can, if you have it or you're interested in getting it, FSI panel is a very, very good tool which allows you to basically set yourself up on the approach or on a certain part of a star, and you can very quickly press a button. It'll set you all up, and you're there, and you don't have to do a whole flight or anything like that. And you can, I can get 10, 15 practices done in half an hour of coming in and doing the landing. So really good for that. And you can set the weather to whatever you want, so you can practice your crosswind landings over and over again. So there we go. We have landed into Gothenburg here. So we now need to do our cleanup. So we've put our speed brakes up, we've put our flaps up, speed brakes up, flaps up, autopilot APU will come on, landing lights can come off, and strobe lights can go to steady. The engine start selectors go back to the off position, and our flight directors will come off. We don't need them now. So we are going to taxi up Whiskey through to Zulu, and then turn onto Zulu to head towards the gates. So we shall do that. We are going to park in at Foxtrot 39, I think. So we'll just get GSX going on that. That should be this one, I think. Yep. Select that. Excellent. So GSX is doing its thing there and setting all of that up. We will head up to here. You missed Gothenburg by a wee bit if you're in Stockholm. Did I say Gothenburg? I'm very good at confusing those two, to be quite honest. Okay, so let's just have a, while we are taxiing along here, let's just have a quick look at this landing, because something tells me the satellite imagery there for this airport isn't right, because according to that I landed on a threshold. I mean, it was 144 knots and 1.1 G, so it wasn't too bad. I'll have a look on Elevatex in a minute. So we are going to taxi up this way. And while we are doing this, we've got a fairly long taxi. We can look to be setting the plane back into the where we need to. So courses will probably get set back to 00. Speed, set that back to 100. Altitude, set that to there. And that. So that is our MCP all reset for whichever crew is in there next. If you are the crew in there, you may not change them as much as that, but fairly sort of common courtesy to reset all of those. Also, brakes can now be disarmed. We'll turn off the weather radar and we'll turn off the terrain radar. Taxi lights will come off when we get to the gate. Strobe lights are off. APU is now on. If that is now available, we can switch over to that. So there we go. We've switched over to that. Okay, we are coming up on Zulu, so we will turn left here onto Zulu. I'm hoping that I'm getting this the right way round and that Zulu is this way. Rambog will shout at me if I've got it the wrong way round. And we will head down to gate 39. What we can also switch off now is our probe heats. He says, trying to switch off the right ones. Probe heats can come off and anti-ice can come off as there is no precipitation around. Okay, so we are coming up on apron Foxtrot Alpha. So there is our waiting crew. So we will slow this down. Take a turn to the left. Now what we don't want to do here is blind everybody, so we will turn off our taxi lights. We've got enough apron lighting here to be able to see. And then we are doing 39 left, which is that one. Press the brakes too much. There we go. And we will follow his instructions. I say follow his instructions. He's madly waving at me. I've gone too far forwards. Wasn't paying attention. Well done, me. Right, parking brakes on, and we've already switched the power over on the engines, so we will switch them off. Right, bear with me for 20 seconds, and then we will do a quick roundup. I just need to, I think there's someone at my door, so just bear with me for a second, and I will be back. Okay, sorry about that. I am back. So let's do a quick roundup then. In fact, we'll do the shutdown checklists, and then just make sure that everybody that we go over, just cover off what we've talked about today. Snake biters, I will come back to your message momentarily. So, transponder needs to go into standby and off. There we go. Parking brake is set. Electrical, APU, or external power. We are currently on the APU. Let's get the chocks in and some ground power. We'll request that and give that a second to appear. Ground power is connected, so we will do that, and then we can shut our APU off. Excellent. Auto brake switch is set to off, which is window heat switches. We were going to leave them on because this plane will imagine it's going out for another leg. Anti-ice is now all off. We've switched that off. Electronic hydraulic pumps need to come off, which they are now off. Passenger signs, yeah, we will let them out. In fact, have we connected the jetway? We haven't connected the jetway. Let's get the jetway connected as well. There we go, that's doing its thing. Anti-collision lights can come off. They come off 30 seconds. You have to wait at least 30 seconds after the engines have been switched off, which they have, so we'll switch them off. Taxi runway turn-off lights are already off. Fuel pumps can all now come off. And packs, we can set those to off. Isolation valve to open. APU bleed. Can leave that on or off. That's operator dependent, really. I would leave it off just because it's part of my checklists to make sure it's switched on. So that's that, and that is the engine, the shutdown checklist. And then if we were doing a securing, we'd turn off the IRS and so on, which we are not. Lovely. Right. Snakebiter says, I can also confirm the C-172 fuel injected still will ice the engine up if you fly through -5 clouds with a low dew point spread. Yes, it happened to me. No, I didn't crash. It came back eventually, but ran through, and I did think I was going to quit at some points. Yes, icing will happen. If you're -5 and you're running through clouds, you will get icing on that. It was messing with the fuel flow as that was moving in time with the RPMs going up and down while it was happening. Kind of nice to have the realism though. Yeah, realism is very impressive, especially with a lot of the icing, especially in 2024. There's a lot more that they have covered. So I think I did talk about potentially doing another flight, but I think we will leave it there for today. We've taken a lot in. We've talked about a lot of stuff and a lot of information. So I'll do a quick recap on just the items that we've covered off, just to sort of quickly go back over them. And I say I'll do that. I'm trying to find my notes. There they are. So we obviously took off, got into the air. We talked about what descent planning is, why it's important, what descent management is, and why it's important. We talked a little bit about different types of approach. So your standard approach, that stepped down approach, the continuous descent approach that is becoming more and more common, and operators are trying to push more and more for their pilots to do, simply because it's more fuel efficient, it's better for the environment. Big thing for the operators is that fuel efficiency. We talked about the different approach energy types. So you've got that high energy approach where you're too high and too fast, or potentially both. You've got that normal energy approach, that 3-degree glide where you're coming in and you want to that's your reference descent. That's where you want to be. Your low energy where you're a bit low and you're doing that slow glide in, a few 100 feet a minute or whatever if you've got too low for particular reasons. We talked about how to calculate our top of descent, that formula, that altitude times 3, using speed as a factor as well, and wind. Adding that into your fixed page to give you that better visualization of the top of descent instead of just that block, and it also just that little dot, that green dot that you get, also compares nicely to the one that the FMC's calculated, to see if you're similar or if there's something considerably different. Why is that considerably different? Is there something in your FMC that is wrong? If your top of descent is 30 miles different to what you've calculated, why is that 30 miles different? It's a nice little check there. We talked about the different descent modes: VNAV path, VNAV speed, VS mode, flight level change or level change, and how to utilize them, where they are potentially utilized. We talked briefly about the stabilized approach and the stabilized approach criteria that you need, and what you should be adhering to as you come into landing. So, that certainly doesn't cover everything, and we haven't got enough time to cover everything and go into huge amounts of detail. We've obviously been online here for 3.5 hours now, talking about a lot of that stuff. So I hope that's gone some way to helping and understanding a little bit about the descent management and descent planning, and how to do that within the 737. And it applies, a lot of the stuff we talked about applies to just any plane, really, be it the Citation X, the A320, anything like that. So hopefully it's helped. I will potentially be doing another stream maybe on Friday. I haven't quite worked out what I will focus on, if I will focus on anything specific, or I might just stream some flights, and we might just do some legs between some European cities, something like that. I haven't quite decided. I'm also not 100% sure if I'll stream on Friday, but I will let people know if I am. Snakebiters says you can technically do a go around all the way down to the runway. So yes, you can be on the ground. You can be rolling on the tarmac and decide you need to do a go around for some reason. Absolutely no reason to not. That is always an option. Cold Nebo, nice to see you. Thank you for joining. Great stream, very instructional. Well, you are very welcome. If any of you want to watch anything back, any specific area of this or anything like that, then I will put this up on my YouTube channel. I'll post the link in Two-Tone Murphy's Discord. There's in the add-ons section, there is a thread for the 737-800, which I've been posting some information in there and stuff since it was released on 2024. So I'll post the link in there for anyone that wants to review this video. And as I said earlier on to Stu Snape and anyone else, if you guys have questions, if you have comments, thoughts, or want to talk about anything specifically with the 737, either the 800 or the MAX, I'm still getting used to some of the differences between the MAX and the NG. But yeah, if you guys have got questions, give me a shout on Discord. I am more than happy to talk through anything. If I don't know the answer, I will happily go and try and find the answer for you, primarily because if I don't have the answer and you've asked the question, it increases my knowledge and my learning as well. So I'm more than happy to go and do the research and work out what the correct answer is. I've got this bee in my bonnet for learning this plane as well as I can at the moment. Yes, I tend to always come back to it. I've been flying many others. The Citation X is a glorious plane. The A350 I'm enjoying a lot, but I keep getting pulled back by this 737. It just It's just enjoyable to fly for me. So, do you ever, snake biters, do you ever print checklists out, etc.? Yes, all of my checklists for every plane that I fly, I have printed and laminated. I'm sitting here at the moment with the physical. In fact, I don't know, can I make this sound? Probably can't hear it very well, but I've got them all printed out and laminated, so I physically have them. I actually have for some of the other planes that I fly, so I'm in the process of, for GA, learning relatively in depth the DA42 from Diamond, and I actually have the official Pooley's checklist that the pilots use in the real plane for that one. So I've managed to get a copy of that. But for the airliners and things where it's obviously a little bit harder, I have all of those printed out. I also have the full operator's handbook for 737, the A350, and a few other airliners as well as the QRHs. So yes, I have I have gone into quite some detail with learning all of this, and it's a little bit nerdy, but at the end of the day, we're all flight simming. We're all a little bit nerdy, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So that is that. Right, I think we will leave it there. We have made it into Stockholm. I like doing this flight. It's a nice length. You get a bit of a cruise. You get some time to think and look around. Flying into Stockholm is gorgeous. I'm also particularly fond of this route because I did it about a month and a half ago with Scandinavian Air. So yes, I've actually done this, and this is the gate that I came into and flew out of when we landed into Stockholm. So it was good fun. So yeah, thank you very much everybody for your time. I appreciate that there was a lot of talking and a lot of information there. I'm not a streamer, I'm not a teacher, so I hope I managed to impart my knowledge in a way that was somewhat interesting and not too monotonous for you. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Have good evenings, and I'm sure I will see you in the skies at some point. Night all.
We keep running faster and faster. I don't know what we're after, yeah. We keep up with disaster. I'm thinking